The sentence landed in the middle of dinner like a glass shattering on tile. "You're not half the woman your sister is." For a split second, Emily Carter thought she had misheard. The words felt unreal, like something from a movie scene that would surely be taken back. But silence followed, heavy, awkward. Reeled at the dining room in their quiet Connecticut home suddenly felt too small. The soft yellow light above the table made everything look warm, but Emily felt cold all the way through. Her parents sat across from her, faces stiff, as if they had already moved on from what they said. Her sister Claire sat beside her, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on her plate. Emily's heart raced. Years of small comments, jokes, comparisons, all of them, rushed forward at once. She felt heat rise to her face, but no tears came. Not yet. She slowly pushed her chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, sharp and loud. No one stopped her. No one said her name. "I think I need some air," Emily said, her voice calm but distant, like it belonged to someone else. She walked out before anyone could answer. The front door closed behind her with a soft click. And suddenly the night wrapped around her. Cool air, quiet streets. A dark sky stretched above neat suburban houses. Emily stood on the porch for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to steady herself. She had come to this dinner hoping to disappear politely. Instead, she had been exposed. Growing up, Emily had learned early how the family story worked. Claire was the star, outgoing, confident, praised by teachers and relatives alike. Emily was the quieter one, the thoughtful one, always described as sweet or sensitive. Words that sounded kind but felt small. Their parents never said they favored Claire. They didn't have to. It showed in every proud story, every comparison disguised as advice. Emily got into her car and drove. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't go home yet. Streetlights blurred past as she followed instinct more than direction. After nearly an hour, she found herself pulling into a familiar parking lot beside a lake. The water was dark and still, reflecting the moon like a promise of calm. She turned off the engine and sat in silence. Her hands trembled slightly as she rested them on the steering wheel. For the first time that night, the tears came not loud or dramatic, just quiet and steady. She wasn't crying because of what her parents said. She was crying because a part of her had always believed it. When she finally stepped out of the car, the cold air felt grounding. She walked toward the edge of the lake, her boots crunching softly on gravel. That's when she noticed she wasn't alone. A man stood near the water, tall, his back turned to her. He wore a dark coat and looked like someone deep in thought. Emily hesitated. She didn't come here to talk to anyone. She considered turning back, but something about the stillness of the moment made her stay. She took a few steps closer, careful not to startle him. The man turned, surprised but not alarmed. "Sorry," Emily said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." He smiled faintly. "You didn't." They stood there for a moment, strangers sharing quiet without pressure. "I'm Daniel," he said finally. "Emily." The conversation began simply. He commented on how calm the lake looked at night. She agreed. There was no rush, no forced cheer. Just two people speaking honestly in low voices. Daniel didn't ask why she was there. Emily didn't explain. That felt like a gift. As they talked, Emily noticed how easy it felt. Daniel listened without interrupting. When he spoke, his words were thoughtful, careful. He mentioned he had moved back to the area recently. That life sometimes felt heavier than expected. Emily understood without needing details. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Emily realized she hadn't checked her phone once. For the first time that evening, her chest felt lighter. Eventually, the cold crept in. And they both laughed softly at how late it had gotten. "I should head back," Emily said. "Me too," Daniel replied. Then, almost shyly, he added, "It was really nice talking to you." She smiled. It was. As she walked back to her car, Emily felt something unfamiliar but welcome hope, small but steady. When she got home later that night, the house was dark. Everyone had gone to bed. Her phone buzzed as she set her keys down. A message from her mother. We didn't mean it the way it sounded. Emily read it twice. She didn't reply. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner, the lake, the stranger who felt more understanding than people, who had known her all her life. She thought about how often she had tried to prove herself, how tired she was. Something inside her shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. Emily fell asleep knowing one thing for certain: she couldn't keep living as the version of herself everyone else expected. And she had no idea that the quiet man by the lake was about to step back into her life and challenge everything her family thought they knew about her. Emily didn't expect to see him again, but there he was, standing at the edge of the lake on a bright Saturday afternoon, sketchbook in hand, jeans rolled slightly, hair messy from the wind. Daniel Reed. She froze for a heartbeat, caught between surprise and relief. Their last meeting had been chance, unplanned. But it had left a mark she hadn't realized she needed. He looked up, noticed her immediately, and a small, genuine smile spread across his face. "I was hoping I'd see you here," he said, voice calm, warm, inviting. Emily smiled back, a little unsure but eager. The tension from months of family comparisons, criticism, and self-doubt seemed to lift slightly in his presence. They walked together along the water's edge, footsteps soft against gravel, and began where they had left off: simple, easy conversations about nothing in particular. The cold bite of the previous autumn was gone, replaced by gentle sunlight and the crisp smell of early winter turning to spring. Emily's sketchbook remained tucked under her arm, and she began to draw again, lines forming slowly but with purpose. Daniel watched quietly, fascinated by the way her hand moved across the page. "Your drawings are incredible," he said finally, after a long pause. Emily flushed but didn't stop. "I just like seeing things differently," she replied softly. Daniel nodded. "I like that about you," he said, and she felt something shift. A quiet acknowledgement of value that had been missing her whole life. From that day on, their meetings became part of a gentle routine. They didn't plan them rigidly, just the unspoken understanding that they would return to the lake, share small moments, and slowly, without realizing it, become part of each other's lives. Coffee runs turned into long walks in the park. Walks became quiet dinners. And dinner conversations revealed shared dreams, regrets, and laughter that felt like home. Daniel never tried to overshadow her or compete with her presence. He simply listened, respected her silence, and encouraged her voice. Emily, in turn, began to notice changes within herself. She laughed more, without feeling self-conscious. She spoke up at work when she had ideas. She set boundaries with her parents, something she had never done confidently before. When criticism came, she didn't argue. She simply walked away or chose not to internalize it. And every time she looked at Daniel, she felt affirmed in her choices. Her voice, her presence. Months passed, and Emily realized she had begun to reclaim herself. She no longer compared herself to Claire, nor sought validation from her parents' praise. She began to understand that worth wasn't measured by comparisons, but by being seen and understood for who she truly was. Daniel had not changed her. He had merely reflected back what she had been too afraid to see herself. When the day came that she decided to introduce Daniel to her family, Emily felt calm, grounded, and surprisingly confident. The Carter family living room, once a place of judgment and comparison, now felt like a stage for a different story. Daniel entered with a polite smile, carrying warmth, confidence, and respect. He spoke kindly to her parents, making them feel acknowledged without putting Emily in the spotlight unnecessarily. Emily noticed subtle shifts in her family. Her parents, who had once unintentionally diminished her in subtle ways, seemed to realize almost immediately the depth of her presence. Her mother's eyes softened, her father's posture loosened, and Claire glanced up from her plate, suddenly aware that Emily's world had expanded beyond the shadows she had always lived in. During a quiet moment that evening, her mother pulled her aside. "You seem different. Happier," she said. Emily simply nodded. She didn't need to explain. She had found her own space, and that was enough. Later, on the porch, Emily and Daniel stood side by side, hands brushing occasionally, enjoying the cool night air. Her father approached, hesitant, yet determined. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I've spent too many years comparing you instead of understanding you." Emily didn't rush to forgive or speak. She let the moment settle. Then, softly, she said, "I just wanted to be seen." Her father's eyes glistened with a mixture of remorse and recognition. "I see you now," he said, and for the first time in years, Emily felt the weight of parental expectation lift. The lake that had once been her refuge in sorrow became a symbol of growth, independence, and self-discovery. Emily often returned there, sometimes alone, sometimes with Daniel, to reflect on how far she had come. She remembered the dinner where harsh words had cut her deeply, the chair she had pushed back in quiet defiance, and the nights she had cried quietly in her car. Those moments no longer defined her. They were the starting point for transformation. Daniel had not been a savior. He had been a mere gentle, patient presence, showing Emily her own strength and worth. And in seeing that, she realized her value wasn't contingent on being compared to anyone else. She wasn't half of anything or anyone. She was whole. As Emily and Daniel walked along the lakeside one evening, the horizon painted in soft oranges and purples, Emily felt the fullness of life settle into her chest. The weight of judgment, of silent competition, of unmet expectations had all been replaced with clarity and a quiet joy she hadn't known she could experience. Her parents had begun to adjust, slowly learning to see Emily not as a shadow of Claire, but as herself, vibrant, capable, and complete. Even Claire, in her own way, began to recognize that Emily had stepped into her own power. Not in opposition, but in authenticity. Emily understood then that leaving the dinner that night had been the bravest choice she had ever made. Walking away hadn't been a retreat, it had been an opening. An opening toward self-respect, toward love, and toward life lived on her own terms. And as Daniel squeezed her hand, Emily knew one thing clearly. She had become the woman she was always meant to be. Whole, visible, and cherished, not because anyone else said so, but because she had finally allowed herself to be seen, to claim her space, and to step fully into her own story for the first time in her life. Emily Carter wasn't defined by comparison, criticism, or expectation. She was defined by choice, courage, and the quiet, enduring truth that she was enough exactly as she was. The lake, the walks, the laughter, the evenings with Daniel, they were all proof. She had left behind the girl who doubted herself, the one who measured worth by another's approval. In her place stood a woman who had discovered her own light, who moved through life with confidence, and who loved with both courage and clarity. And the best part was that she hadn't had to prove herself to anyone, only to believe in herself. Emily looked out across the lake one last time that evening, the wind brushing her hair back, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Daniel stood beside her, quiet, content, hand in hers. A reminder that connection and understanding could flourish when nurtured with patience and respect. Everything had changed. Everything had fallen into place. Emily Carter had finally stepped out of the shadows and into her own life, a life full of hope, warmth, and the kind of love that didn't diminish her worth but reflected it back in every gentle word, every shared smile, and every quiet moment of understanding. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water with golden light, Emily knew one truth with absolute certainty: walking away from what didn't serve her had led her exactly to where she was meant to be, whole, happy, and finally free.